Here we go. Europe is unraveling in ways that should make every one of us sit up and pay attention. Political chaos in France, protests turning violent in Amsterdam, former presidents being sent to prison, and in the middle of it all, a whirlwind Middle East trip that's got everyone talking about peace deals and Nobel Prizes. But before we dive into what's really happening behind these headlines, let me tell you something about myself. I spent years inside a major media organization, one you'd recognize immediately. I watched editors kill stories that didn't fit the approved narrative. I saw how facts got bent, twisted, shaped into something unrecognizable. And one day I realized I had a choice: keep my comfortable position and stay silent, or walk away and tell you the truth. I chose the truth. Now I'm independent. I answer to no one, and I'm here to connect the dots they don't want you to see. And listen, if you value what you're hearing right now, if you're tired of the sanitized, corporate-approved version of events, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you really want to support independent journalism that doesn't bow to pressure, consider becoming a channel member. It makes a real difference, and it keeps this operation running without corporate strings attached. So let's start with Germany, because what's happening there tells you everything about where Europe's head is at right now. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, fresh off watching developments in the Middle East, has come out swinging with a bold demand. He wants President Trump to replicate that success and broker peace in Ukraine. Just like that. Merz made it clear he intends to use every opportunity to discuss with the American president what they can do together to end this conflict. And why? Because according to Merz, the war in Europe represents the single biggest threat to freedom on the continent. Now here's where it gets interesting. Is this genuine diplomatic outreach, or is this political theater for domestic consumption? Merz knows the German public is exhausted by this conflict. Energy prices, economic uncertainty, the refugee crisis, it's all connected. So when he makes these grand statements about partnering with Trump to end the war, is he actually crafting a concrete plan, or is he positioning himself for the next election cycle? The intrigue here is massive, and we're going to have to watch very carefully to see if any actual policy proposals emerge from this rhetoric. But if you think Germany has political drama, wait until you hear what's unfolding in France. President Emmanuel Macron has just delivered a masterclass in defiance, and depending on your perspective, either courageous leadership or stunning arrogance. Despite growing calls from the opposition for his resignation, despite a deepening political crisis that's got the country in gridlock, Macron has announced he's staying put. He's continuing to fulfill his duties to ensure stability in the country. That was his exact framing. And then he wrapped himself in the language of service. Never forget, he said, that the mandate given by the French people is to serve, serve, and serve again. To answer the questions of ordinary French citizens and do everything possible for France's independence. It's a beautiful speech, really. It's also a direct middle finger to everyone demanding he step down. Macron went further, blaming unnamed political forces, without mentioning specific parties or names, for playing destabilization games against Prime Minister Sebastian Le Cornu. According to Macron, they're the only ones responsible for the chaos. Speaking of Le Cornu, in an unexpected move, Macron has reappointed him as Prime Minister, and Le Cornu has just unveiled a new cabinet designed to end the political crisis. 34 members, many of them virtually unknown even inside France. The French people are looking at this cabinet and asking, who are these people? And here's the pressure point. Today is the deadline for submitting the 2026 budget. Le Cornu is under immense pressure. If this budget fails in Parliament, he's already said he won't rule out resigning again. So how long does this government last? Nobody knows. Macron, whose term runs until 2027, doesn't have a parliamentary majority. The opposition wants early elections and his resignation. And what does Macron do at this critical moment? He flies to Egypt to participate in a ceremony signing a peace plan for Gaza. Meanwhile, back in Paris, his government is fighting for survival, and his prime minister is trying to prevent a complete political collapse. If that doesn't work, Le Cornu's out again. The irony is almost poetic. Don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to tell you about a former French president is going to blow your mind. And if you're finding this valuable, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about these developments. Are we watching the collapse of the old European order? Your perspective matters. While Macron plays statesman abroad, France's Financial Prosecutor's Office has just informed former President Nicolas Sarkozy which prison he needs to report to and when. Sarkozy has been sentenced to 5 years for criminal conspiracy related to using funds from Libya. Remember when Libya was prosperous? Those funds allegedly financed his victorious 2007 election campaign. They haven't forgotten, and they're not forgiving. For security reasons, Sarkozy is expected to be held in conditions reserved for high-profile prisoners, possibly in a special VIP zone of a Paris prison where some of France's most notorious criminals are housed. After his imprisonment begins, the 70-year-old will be able to file an appeal for release, and judges will have up to 2 months to review the request. So France has a sitting president fighting for political survival and a former president about to enter a prison cell. If that's not a sign of institutional crisis, I don't know what is. Now let's move to the Netherlands, because Amsterdam is still recovering from protests that turned into exactly what you'd expect: riots, mass arrests, property damage. These weren't just any protests. These were demonstrations against illegal immigration, and they got ugly. According to local media, protesters were launching fireworks, chanting slogans against illegal migration, and destroying public property. The result? Numerous arrests, the usual aftermath. But here's the context that matters. These protests are happening as the Netherlands prepares for snap elections on October 29th. The ruling government collapsed over disagreements on migration policy, triggered when Geert Wilders, leader of the right-wing Party for Freedom, pulled his ministers out. Wilders himself says he's now in danger. Whether that's genuine security concerns or political positioning, we'll see. But what's undeniable is that migration has become the fault line that's fracturing Dutch politics. And it's not going away. Keep watching, because the Middle East developments I'm about to describe have implications far beyond that region. Let me take you to Spain for a moment, specifically Madrid, where 2 eco-activists from a far-left group decided to make a statement by dousing a painting of Christopher Columbus with red paint. Their target? The national holiday on October 12th, Hispanic Day, which commemorates Columbus's discovery of the Americas. These activists are protesting what they see as the glorification of colonialism and centuries of oppression against indigenous peoples in Latin America. Their message celebrating Columbus isn't just about discovering the New World, it's about the beginning of brutal exploitation that enriched certain individuals. A museum security guard managed to prevent further damage and detained the women until police arrived. After brief questioning, the activists were released, but experts say the damage is severe. Red paint seeped between cracks in the painting and into the canvas. The varnish is damaged, and so is the water-sensitive gilded frame. Now, I'm not here to debate the merits of Columbus Day or indigenous rights. What's fascinating is how these symbolic acts of vandalism have become the preferred tactic of activist movements across Europe. Soup on Van Goghs, paint on Columbus. They're banking on the shock value to amplify their message, but are they winning converts or just alienating the public? That's the question. And now we arrive at what's dominating headlines around the world: Israel. After 2 years and 6 days of unimaginable anguish, the last 20 living hostages have been released. People in Israel are crying, but these are tears of joy and relief. Families who waited, who hoped, who believed against all odds, are finally reunited with their loved ones. The scenes in Tel Aviv's main square were overwhelming. On the beach, they erected a massive banner thanking President Trump, positioned so it could be seen from aircraft on approach. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu greeted Trump and later presented him with a statue of a golden dove of peace. Trump met with hostage families and listened to their stories. When he entered the Knesset chamber to address Parliament, he was met with thunderous, prolonged applause. The Speaker of the Knesset announced that Trump deserves the highest recognition for his efforts in advancing peace and declared that he, along with Speaker Mike Johnson, would petition parliaments around the world to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Quote, "There is no one but you who truly deserves this award," end quote. That was the declaration. So it looks like Trump might be getting a Nobel Peace Prize next year. That's what they're saying. Now, let me be very clear about something. I'm not here to worship at any political altar, and I'm not going to pretend this is all sunshine and roses just because people are celebrating. These hostages being released is unquestionably good news. Families reunited after unimaginable trauma, that's a victory for humanity, period. But let's also be realistic about the larger picture. Trump promised to stand with Israel to the end, and his speech in the Israeli parliament lasted over an hour, constantly interrupted by applause. He called Israel the spiritual and geographical center of the entire world, and spoke of hope, harmony, opportunities, and happiness waiting there. That's powerful rhetoric, and clearly it resonated in that room. But here's what we should be asking. What comes next? Trump also said he'd like to reach a peace agreement with Iran, but only after the Russia situation is resolved. He stated that after the conclusion of hostilities in Gaza, he plans to focus entirely on ending the conflict in Ukraine. So we've got a sequence here: Gaza, then Ukraine, then Iran. That's the roadmap he's laying out. The question is, can he deliver? Is this achievable diplomacy? Or are we watching promises that sound good in the moment, but face impossible obstacles in reality? I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying we need to watch this closely and measure results against rhetoric. If you're still with me, you're getting the full picture. Stay locked in. And here's a moment that tells you everything about Trump's relationship with certain media outlets. While traveling on Air Force One, a journalist from Politico tried to ask a question during the press gaggle. Trump immediately shut it down. He asked who she was with. She answered Politico, said her name was Dasha Burns. Trump's response? Dasha, Politico. Politico has gone bad. They've been wrong about everything. Let's have someone else ask questions. You don't mind, do you? Because Politico is fake news. Just like that. Cut off. Now, Politico happens to be one of the favorite publications of the European Commission establishment, so this is going to sting in Brussels. Trump has essentially declared that outlet persona non grata, at least as far as he's concerned. Their reputation, according to him, is shot. Whether you agree with his assessment or not, what's undeniable is that he's willing to publicly humiliate journalists and outlets he believes have treated him unfairly. That sets a tone, and it sends a message to every other reporter on that plane. So that's where we are right now, a former media darling getting iced out in real time. All right? Let's pull this together, because there's a pattern here that's bigger than any single story. We've got Germany's leader calling for Trump to broker peace in Ukraine. We've got France in the middle of a political crisis, with Macron refusing to step down, a reappointed prime minister with an unknown cabinet, and a former president heading to prison. The Netherlands is seeing violent protests over migration just before snap elections. Activists in Spain are vandalizing art to protest colonialism. And in the Middle East, hostages are free, Trump is being hailed as a peacemaker and promised a Nobel nomination, and he's laying out an ambitious diplomatic sequence: Gaza, Ukraine, then Iran. Every one of these stories connects to a larger theme: political instability, public frustration, the question of whether traditional institutions can hold, and whether bold, unconventional leadership can actually deliver results or just makes compelling television. These are the questions we have to keep asking as these situations develop. So here's what I need from you. If this kind of analysis matters to you, if you want someone who's going to give it to you straight without the corporate filter, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because we're just getting started, and if you really want to make a difference, if you believe in supporting independent voices who aren't afraid to call it like they see it, become a channel member. It means everything. It keeps this going. It keeps me accountable to you, not to advertisers, not to media conglomerates, just to you. Thank you for being here. Now let's keep watching this unfold together, because I guarantee you this story is far from over.